going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review. This is our weekly show where we review the Magic stories. And this week we are back with our continuation of our reviews of the Innistrad Crimson Vow stories. We are here for side story number 2, The Blessing of Blood by Marcus Terrell Smith. My review, quick review at the top of this one is, I thought it was good. I had worries or expectations going in, and I think some of those were quelled and others were not, just based on the fact that I knew that this was a Thalia Odric story, and I knew based on seeing the cards where that was going. And like I said, some of that was quelled. I think the writing was spectacular regardless, right? It's just the form of where the story actually went. But I still would recommend reading it, especially if you are a Thalia and or Odric fan, or Innistrad in general. It's definitely important to find out where they're going next. So, what about you, Amy? What were your thoughts?
I don't know about that. My quick review is, if you're a fan of Thalia, skip it.
Fair, and we can get into that. It was definitely, I think you and I were talking about this before we started, it was definitely much more of an Odric story than a Thalia story, despite the fact that she's the first picture that you see, she's the first voice that you hear from in letter form, and etc. So that's an interesting point. I appreciate that. So those are our quick reviews at the top. If for some reason you have not read the story yet and you want to, we have tried to remove as many barriers as possible, as usual, from you being able to do that. So if you would like, the top link in the description down below will take you directly to the story. Feel free to click that, read the story if you would like to, especially based on our reviews here at the beginning. And then, of course, we would love it if you would come back here and join us for the continuation of the review itself, so that you can give your opinions, because your opinions are definitely encouraged to be put in the description, or the comments down below.
Yes.
There are two things down below, and if I mix them up, I sound silly. The comments section down below is where you all can give your opinions. The description is where we put things. Anyway.
You could try. I don't think it'll work, but you could try.
No, it will not. So before we get into the full review itself, hi, welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Welcome to Geek for All. We also have Video Games for All and Gluten Free for All. Yes. Links also in the description, proper placing, description down below. So if you're interested, definitely check those channels out as well. We're doing great stuff over on both of those, and on all 3 of those channels that we just mentioned. Don't forget to subscribe, and as Amy showed you, ring that bell. You will make sure that you get notifications whenever any of our videos come out across any of the channels, as well as whenever we go live here on Geek for All, which is every Monday and, for the month of December, Thursday, from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on this channel. Mondays, for fans of Magic the Gathering, we play MTG Arena. And then on Thursdays this month, we are playing through X-Men Legends for the PlayStation 2. And then, that's right, hey, look at that. And then where I use Iceman every time because I love him and he's amazing. And even if he dies, he will be revived. I don't care how much it costs. Anyway. So if that's something, any of those things interest you, like I said, don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell. We would love it if you would join us live on stream Mondays, Thursdays, and then when the new year begins, if you're watching this after the new year 2022 starts, we should be back to Fridays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern instead, but because of the holidays, etc. in December, we moved it to Thursdays. So, on to the full review itself. Thank you for bearing with us for that, and we appreciate any and all support that you are all willing to give. I like that this story started with a letter. I don't know whether Marcus Terrell Smith, the author, did that as a callback to the Allison Lore's Games style of story, or if that's just, it's a letter. It's a way of conveying things that have occurred in the past, and you can kind of just go from there. I'd like to think it was a little bit of both, because obviously the stories that have Gisa and Geralf having letters in them would make more sense to be homages back to that, and this could just be a thing. But I'd like to think that that's not something that we see very often.
Correct.
Right, in like on other planes, etc. Right, so now that we're on Innistrad and there's a letter at the beginning of the story, it of course made me think back to games just like the Gisa story that we reviewed from Midnight Hunt did. So, again, whether it was a purposeful homage or not.
Well, it could be an homage to other properties that sort of take place during a sort of medieval or even Victorian type era.
Sure.
Which I feel like is a large inspiration. Both of those time periods are large inspirations for Innistrad, the plane. That's how they communicated.
Yeah.
And that's how it would be easy for them to communicate, and that's something that you see in movies that take place in those periods of times probably pretty frequently. So I don't know, maybe it's just an homage to that.
Yeah.
More than it is to, like, it doesn't seem like it's trying to be like a through line with all the stories or anything like that.
I agree.
And it's not really something that we see on other planes as much, like you said.
Right.
So I think it's just kind of a way of saying, like, you know, this is the kind of thing that you would see, you know, and then it kind of goes along with the invitations.
Sure,
maybe,
good point.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And you would expect to see, like, these letters with, like, you know, the wax seals on them.
Yep.
And, you know, things like that are fun and take you to the setting where you're at.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's a fair point. I liked that in the letter, it harkened back to a story from Eldritch Moon, which we reviewed, by the way. And so check this out. Watch this magic. If you click up there in the top corner or tap up there, you can go watch that review where we reviewed the story of Thalia fighting Brizella. Spoilers, we didn't love that story. So if you want to go back and watch our, like, negative review because we didn't enjoy it, right? Not like, you know, not like we did negative reviews back then. No,
we do a lot more of them now than we used to back then.
Yeah, but we very much did not really enjoy that story. It's one of the worst ones that I remember having read. So if you're interested, you can, like I said, click right up there.
I've
that
always
little
loved
icon.
Thalia, though.
Yes, exactly. Well, and that was what was kind of so disappointing about that. Plus, I loved Brizella from Eldritch Moon, and it was Thalia fighting Brizella with Sigarda as well involved, and Avacyn's spear or whatever, and we still didn't like it. So if you want to know why, definitely go check out that review.
Our expectations were high going in, I guess.
Yeah, that was many, many years ago, so enjoy seeing younger Joe and Amy. That's a thing.
My hair was the same color back then. I dyed my hair back to brown recently, and that's my actual natural color.
There you go.
So that I'm pretty sure back then it was before I started dyeing it red. So.
I think so. I also think it was before you cut your hair, so your hair was like super long.
Like this.
Well, yeah, good point.
Or probably longer.
Longer than I think so. Yeah, but anyway, I liked how they talked about Odric tracing Avacyn's collar on his chest. And for Christians, right, I think of the sign of the cross that people would do when worshipping or paying homage or whatever you want to call it in making the sign of the cross. And what he does is draws Avacyn's symbol on his chest. And it said, from shoulder to heart, right? And so I imagined it this way because that's how I would do the sign of the cross, is to start here and go down. I'm trying not to purposefully do it because it could be considered sacrilege and I don't want to do that. But the drawing of Avacyn's collar, right, being this way, shoulder to heart, especially because the heart more considered to be closer to the left-hand side of the body. So that would make sense to me. But I liked that. I liked that that's another aspect of the Abyssinian religion or faith.
I thought it was like shoulder to heart, like that.
Interesting.
That's
Okay.
how I thought it was, because
Okay.
the Avacyn symbol has like the two
Yeah.
knees.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's an interesting
That's how
point.
I thought
I
it
just
was.
kind of assumed it was like shoulder to heart, shoulder to heart. Interesting. Let us know what you thought in the comments down below. I like that a lot, actually. Very intriguing. Okay.
That's what I thought of.
I appreciated that the beginning of the story mentions that he was taking, when Odric was being brought food and water by the monks, he wasn't partaking most of the time that they would bring him stuff. And anytime he was, the majority, if not the entirety of what he was taking in was like blessed water, holy water, blessed by himself or the priest that he was with. And I wrote at the time that happened, I was like, wow, knowing that he's going to become a vampire later in the story, like, that's an interesting thing to put in there, because you're thinking to yourself, wow, how do they get around the fact that he's got holy water in his blood? Like, what negates that to allow him to turn into a vampire? And then I got massively swerved, because that's not at all why they mentioned that. I really assumed that was written there for people who had seen the Hero's Downfall and the Odric card where he is a vampire, so that you'd think to yourself, oh god, so even with him showing that he's protecting his blood with this holy water, that he's still somehow going to turn into a vampire. How's that going to work? What are they going to do to him to negate that blessing from the holy water? That's not why it was there, right? That was not why that Chekhov's gun was present in the story. It was because then we see later on, and I wrote later, amazing. Because instead it was that when the vampires drank his blood, they consumed the holy water and exploded from it. And it just killed a bunch of them.
Well, and it kept him from turning full-fledged into a vampire.
I have different theories as to why that happened. That's the most likely, but I felt like it could have also been if they didn't stay long enough because they were sickened and so they backed away, maybe they didn't fully turn him, or maybe it was his will, or the fact that he had his blessed sword, or he was so holy to begin with. It's unclear to me. Like I said, I think your point makes the most sense, that it would be he's got holy water in his blood, right. So it's harder for him to turn full vampire because he's so blessed. But I thought that it could have been a number of different things that they were going with for that.
Well, and it might be.
Sure.
It might be here's a whole collection of things that, when all put together, equal, you don't become fully a vampire.
Right. Which is, congrats. Yeah, I guess. I liked that we continue this Avacyn through line, right? I don't know that I've ever, I appreciate that a character like Avacyn died and is so heavily focused on in all of these stories. Midnight Hunt, Crimson Vow, main stories, side stories. Her wards are still being used. People are still wishing to worship her and keep the faith, even though they know that she was corrupted and then killed. I really appreciate that they still talk of hope. Now, in this story, the way that they talk about hope in regard to Avacyn wasn't great. In that, it was great. We loved it. We thought it was really cool. I say we because you mentioned that you thought it was really cool. I just agree with that sentiment. But they said, the priest said, no more need for hope.
Yeah.
Kind of referencing the fact that Avacyn is gone, saying to Odric, look, you don't have to keep up this vigil any longer. You don't have to keep up all this worship. There's no more need for that. She's dead. There's no more need for hope. Because Avacyn, Angel of Hope, they just keep talking about hope as a concept, and the fact that it's gone now, right? Avacyn's gone, hope is gone. They are equivalent in some people's minds. And Odric doesn't seem to be that way, but...
No. And the priest was like, yeah, so let's throw our hands up and just give in to the bullshit that is Innistrad now.
Yeah.
And Odric's like, IDK.
Is it cool if maybe I don't? Is that cool with everybody?
IDK my BFF jail.
There was talk of the travails, and they didn't mention it as the travails, but just talking about that incident And they've talked about the travails a lot, again, in Midnight Hunt and in Crimson Vow here. But something that you brought up that I think I just took for granted, but it's never been explicitly said, I don't think. But something that you like brought up / questioned is the fact that it seems like these people don't know that it was Emrakul.
Right. Well, so it didn't occur to me that the people of Innistrad didn't, or at least the people still alive on Innistrad, didn't necessarily see Emrakul and say, oh shit, it's a gigantic alien who's here to kill us. It didn't occur to me that they might, in some capacity, have been too far away from her location, or, there could have been a myriad of reasons why individuals who are still alive on Innistrad wouldn't necessarily know or be aware of the fact that Emrakul was the one who caused the issue in the first place. And two, what that even means, right? They might not be cognizant of... I mean, if you think about it, the people of Amonkhet didn't know anything about Emrakul that was real, right? They knew very little of Emrakul.
Do you mean Zendikar?
No.
Amonkhet? When was...
Not Amonkhet. You're right. They had this whole, like, religion based around the three...
that's the merfolk of Zendikar.
Right.
Yes.
Around the three, Eldrazi, knowing very little about them, realistically speaking.
Yeah.
And even the depictions that they had of them, although somewhat similar to how they looked, it was only very slightly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you kind of compare it to that, I mean, there's definitely some space for there to be quite a bit of confusion about what the problem actually is here during the travails.
Right. Or even if they saw Emrakul, right, and knew that that was going on in that period of time, they may have thought that the corruption of Avacyn, Bruna, Gisela, etc. led to Emrakul, not the other way around.
Right.
Right? Because it seemed in this story especially like they were not really blaming the angels, but like solely focusing on the angels, right? The angels were supposed to protect us, and yet look at them now.
And
look at what
failed us, and they're terrible, and it's like, whoa,
right.
wait a minute.
Right, and like Sigarda helped kill her sisters, so she's no better.
Right,
like,
and it's like they're angels. And they were trying their best, man. Like, they really, they really gave it their all against this gigantic alien who, can basically do whatever it wants to any plane ever. I mean...
Yeah. So it was like...
The concept that the individual people of Innistrad had of the scope of that was so small, because none of them even necessarily knew about planeswalkers or other planes or... aliens or anything.
And the Gatewatch and Sorin was a little busy, and Nahiri definitely wasn't sticking around. They weren't gonna stick around to, like, gather around everyone, let's explain to everyone what just happened and why, like, let's talk about aliens, shall we, right? Everybody was a little preoccupied, so it was just like, okay, bye Innistrad, we saved you from Emrakul, thanks Tamio / Emrakul yourself, we're gonna go. Good luck with all that, because that looks like a problem there.
And I mean, if you think about it, like, in terms of, like, if you want to apply it to, like, real life, how many times does something happen in real life, and then you've got all these groups of people coming up with their own conclusions that are usually wrong, or, people thinking it's it's fake, you know, or whatever.
Sure.
You know, conspiracy theories that just make it like swerve in completely the opposite direction and be completely improbable at that point.
Right. Or just rumors in general, and because that's the first thing that you heard about it, that's your belief as to what it was. And then if you're corrected, you're like, you know, because there are absolutely people out there who you will correct them on something that they've gotten wrong, and they'll go, oh, let me look that up and make sure that you're correct. Maybe I was wrong. And there are other people who are like, no, that's not it at all. It's this thing instead, because they're just so convinced that they're right, or so convinced that they could not possibly be wrong. Even though, you know, you were just given wrong information. It's not your fault. You just, like, that's what you saw first because somebody tried to talk about it before all the information was out, or whatever the case may be.
Well, and that's what I said when they were so mad at the Angels. I was like, wait a minute, it's not their fault. You know, they were trying to fix it, you know, as best as they could, but, you know, they just couldn't.
Yep.
And the people of Innistrad said, you exist because you're supposed to protect us. You either do or do not exist still, but you didn't protect us, therefore you're bad.
Yeah.
The end, right? Yeah. So it's such a like stripped down, simplistic version of reality there, but it's the reality that they apparently know.
And that's such a cool thing about these side stories, right? Where if you go back and look at our reviews of Shadows over Innistrad and Eldritch Moon, these side stories and main stories weren't a thing. It was just they released a bunch of stories. And what would today be considered side stories, the thing I'll think of to make Amy smile, would be what the hell's the frog's name? Why can't I think of it? Why am I like messing this up?
The Gitrog?
The Gitrog monster. The story about the Gitrog monster was absolutely would have been a side story, right? It just talks about the denizens of, like, you get like a little bit of like, oh, there's something going on here, so it like ties back to the main story, but it kind of doesn't.
Right.
So the Gitrog monster would have been a side story. But they didn't do that. They just released them sequentially in whatever order they needed to release them in, and they mixed them all together. And so, like, the cool thing about these side stories is you get that moment of like, holy crap, did they not know that it was Emrakul? Like,
yeah, it like blew my mind. I was like, oh my god, that changes everything. Because it never occurred to me that they didn't know.
See, and it's funny because to me, based on how I was reading it, I just assumed that they didn't know that it was Emrakul. But that's not, like, because it wasn't expressly stated, either could be correct.
Right.
I just felt like the way that these stories were written, they were all saying, like, well, when that crazy stuff happened, I mean, who knows what happened with that? It's like, we do. Over here, there was a big friggin' alien, did you not, like, tentacle monster thing. I mean, I know it's Innistrad, so, like, you guys are like, oh, it's a Tuesday. Like... I'm so sorry.
Emrakul does not go to Innistrad that often.
Exactly.
And she does not look similar to the other monsters on Innistrad.
No. The other monsters are at least normally of a manageable-ish size in comparison to, you know, the plain entity, the plain-sized entity that is Emrakul. So.
Fills the sky, I believe.
That's was
the description.
Well, that was the other two when they were killed. They were pulled in and just filled out the sky. But Emrakul was pretty damn big. Don't get me wrong. I liked that this story. We're talking about angels. We're talking about Cathars who are worshiping demons, and that Odric was kind of regretful of the fact that he had to kill them or had to stand by when they were killed and watch them die. He regretted that and regretted that those Cathars had to be or were corrupted in that way. And it was perfect when they showed that Henrika was the vampire that was coming in this story. Because we just read about her last week.
Yeah.
We just talked about her last week on JaAR. So you can go back and watch that if you missed it as well. But we just talked about her last week. And to hear that she comes in, I'm like, oh my god, it's the demon lady. because
the demon lady.
She was the head of the vampire family that was like super intertwined with demons, and she was intertwined with demons, rumored to be at least, that she was the rumored lover of Grizzlebrand. So I thought it was perfect that it was her, because like, sure, who else would it be? Olivia's a little busy, but it was awesome when she showed up. I was like, I get it. It makes perfect sense. And the fact that you have a Cathar who would be the one who would be confronting her, or vice versa. She would be confronting Cathars. Like, it just made perfect sense.
But I guess she wasn't invited to the wedding?
She was. That's why we saw her last week. Because she was at the wedding the week prior. We don't know, like, this story wasn't going on, like, parallel, right?
I was so confused about the timeline with this story.
It was a little...
And then it was more future to that, but it was still the past.
Yeah, it was a little confusing, I'll give you that, definitely.
Yeah, I was having a lot of trouble. You were trying to help me out with it.
Well, yeah, but once I delved further into it, like, I was like, of course, it's this. And then I delved further into it, and I was like, is it though? Like, it was close for me. Like, I felt like I had a handle on it, and then when you questioned it, it gave me a little bit of pause, right? Where I was like, oh, wait, because the letter was from the past, but in the letter it talks about stuff that happened during the story that we reviewed, that I told you was linked at the top, and then the letter talked about a little bit after that when Saint Traft was purged from Thalia's system, and she also almost fell a victim to the madness. But then she was able to survive, and the letter gets sent to Odric, and then at one point it says several weeks later, this thing occurs with him and the priest, and, you know, they mention the sun setting, so it has to be prior to the end of Midnight Hunt, because the sun was still up and existing and then setting, right? So I agree with you that it was pseudo-unclear. It feels to me like it was in the past, just not way in the past.
Right. Yeah, I mean, for that, like, I don't know. I guess I can come back to Thalia when you're at a point where that makes sense.
Oh, I don't have much more to say about her, so go for it. Because there's a reason for that.
I was going into this story thinking that it was going to be a story about Thalia, and I was excited about that.
First picture, right as you turn it on, it's the thumbnail of the story.
It's not a story about Thalia, and realistically speaking, like, I'm still in that boat of feeling like characterization doesn't get to be a thing anymore, and it's super annoying. Like, stop going back to old planes if you're going to reference old characters and then not make them feel like the original character. I mean, if you can't provide adequate characterization, why are you providing, or why are you attempting? Just write about new characters. That's the way I feel about it, but that's me.
Well, so, speaking of which, going pseudo along those lines, but if you want to talk more about Thalia, we can in a moment, but I like I said, I don't have much more to talk about her with. But I feel like I have the perfect thing to follow that up with, which is that when I heard through Hero's Downfall, and actually shout outs to Erica in our chat, and as a fan and a friend of the channel as well, Erica was the one who mentioned the day that Hero's Downfall was revealed, showing that Odric was going to become a vampire. Mm-hmm. Erica was the one who told us, and that was the first I had heard of it. And so I appreciated being given the heads up, because she knew how much we enjoy the stories, right. Vorthos that we are. And so I didn't like that, like at all. Not Erica telling us. Erica's amazing. Right. I didn't like hearing that was a decision that they came up with. Yeah. Of oh yeah, he's just going to be a vampire. I heard. I don't remember the developer's name, and I'm very sorry for that. So if somebody remembers, you're more than welcome to leave it in the description, or not in the description. Don't leave things in our description. Leave it in the comments. But I don't remember the developer's name, but one of the developers did say in like an article or something that he was very much wanting to do this, to have Odric become a vampire, to show how desperate things really were. I get that. I fully understand that compulsion of wanting that to be a thing, to get across to your readers like, this is important, this is dire, the situation is scary. But I feel like it's another example of the R&D, right, the people who make the cards, not communicating well enough with, or not communicating early on enough with the people who write the stories, the story team. Because I think the story team did a great job so far of conveying how dire this situation really is. I think they did a great job.
Yeah.
I didn't need, oh God, Odric is a vampire now. Things are really messed up. Like, no, I got it when Soren was like, oh, all of the food will run out.
Right.
It just will run out, and there will be no more humans left on all of Innistrad. That's enough for me. I get it. Check, please.
Right.
I'm done. You don't need to then forever change this character. I know I'm sure that there are people who are very excited. And you're more than welcome to let me know in the comments if you're one of those people, because I imagine that Odric, I was saying this to Amy, it seems like Odric is now going to be able to go be a Blade type character. But I love Marvel. I love Marvel. Just as much as the next guy, if not infinitely more than the next guy. Just because Marvel is very successful doesn't mean that you have to be Marvel.
Yeah, stop trying to copy them because it's just a poor imitation instead of, something authentic.
We all know that Blade is coming out. We all know that you could get there before them because they have to announce things so far in advance, and you have a little bit better of a turnaround than that. I mean, they work like 3 years ahead, but still. But I think it shows a lack of trust in the synergy between your card story and your paper story or your digital story. Because the story being told in the cards, yes, Odric becoming a vampire and having the flavor text on Odric's card and on Hero's Downfall does, in the card story, show the urgency of what's going on in Crimson Vow. But the story does that too. And better.
Yeah, but I think they feel like they can't rely on that because they need people who aren't going to read the stories to also get it.
I'll agree with that. I 100% agree with that.
But if the stories were better, maybe more people would read them.
Well, it's not if they were better, right? I thought the story was very well written. I think if the stories had been more consistent and you didn't lose out on most of your Vorthos fans, or many of your Vorthos fans who were like, I'm kind of tired of being shit on constantly, so I'm going to just go.
Right.
Hope that's okay. And so this is the fallout from that, is that you're like, well, we have to get the story across on cards only, so let's do it. What?
Even though it doesn't comply with the story that you write as a story.
Because it can't. Because you made the cards months and months and months and months and months and months, or years prior to when your author is receiving the information for the story, because you're not working together and meshing properly. So I didn't love when I heard that Odric was becoming a vampire, right? And then, in addition to that, if Odric was becoming a vampire, I think they did a cool thing of allowing that holy water situation to occur, where the vampire that was drinking his blood or holding him down or whatever was like, I don't feel so good, blah, explodes, right? Or something's wrong. And then explodes and gets that vampire's guts all over some other vampires who also blow up because they were also drinking from him or whatever, and they blow up, and then the gore gets on Henrika, and she starts having, getting an effect, and then she's like, this isn't over, and transforms into mist and floats away. Why not pull the trigger? Why not kill her? Do you not have enough bad guy vampires? Because Ormondal's still around. Like, I know he's not a vampire, don't get me wrong. He's a demon. But Ormondal just sank back into the ground, right? Ormondal was barely present, but he shows up, pops up a little bit, and oh, nope, they stopped me. And he goes away and he's gone. You know he can absolutely come back. That's not even a question in my mind. Why not kill her? Why not have that be her comeuppance for her arrogance? Why not give...
This is Crimson Vow, Joe. Vampires don't die in these stories. Vampires flourish in these stories because it's Crimson Vow.
Except for all the ones
It's a wedding.
Except for all the ones that blew up and got their gore all over Henrika, but you know, screw them, right?
Exactly.
I felt like they could have pulled the trigger on it.
Yeah, it was stupid.
I was like, okay, so like, you turned Odric into a vampire, and like, I get it, your future stories are going to be really awesome now, because you've got Blade in Magic the Gathering now, on Innistrad. Oh, okay. What about now? Like, I guess it's the big shock of, oh my god, he's a vampire, but then it undercuts this story, because obviously the cards came out well before this, so the shock of, oh my god, he's a vampire already happened. And the shock of, oh, he had holy water in his system, so he killed the vampires. But did he? He killed some of them. You better believe that when Henrika comes back again, she's just going to have more Dumnathi with her, because it's not like they were all there and they all just died. So, I don't know. I wished for a bit more of a conclusion to occur with regard to Odric becoming a vampire, because I was so upset that Odric was becoming a vampire, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Let me know your thoughts about that in the comments below as well. Like, did you think it was awesome going in? And then after you read the story, what did you think? Because to me, it was like, I was a little frustrated.
Yeah.
I won't lie.
I get you.
Speaking of a little frustrated, do you want to talk more about Thalia or no?
No, I mean, the issue is characterization, and I've said it in plenty of other jars, and I'm sure I'll say it going forward as well. That's the problem. The problem isn't Thalia or what they did with Thalia. It's what they do with any character that is beloved and known. They just don't keep consistent characterization, or at least, in my opinion, they don't. Maybe they're like, well, if we keep it kind of vague and, you know, we don't go super in detail into, like, their personality and stuff, then maybe we don't have to care that the characterization's kind of, like, not right. And that's very frustrating.
Yeah, that's fair. So, definitely, as with anything, let us know your thoughts. Because, honestly, if you think that they did follow Thalia's characterization, let us know in the comments down below. We want to hear from you, right? As we say, if you have not been here before, we're not looking to argue with you, right? We want to hear contrasting opinions to ours, because maybe you'll give us a different perspective on things.
Yeah, maybe you thought of something. Maybe you can sit there and say, oh, no, you know what? Thalia said this one thing that, like,
really reminded me.
Makes you realize that, like, she kind of went from being the person that she used to be and transitioned into the person she is now. And so therefore, like, it's not that her characterization is wrong, it's just that she's changed as a character. And if you want to put that in the comments, I want to hear about it. Because if there's some semblance of this making more sense or being better than I think it is, I want to know. Well,
and I truly think that us talking to all of you, giving our opinions, and then asking you for yours, kind of almost in a pleading manner of like, please give us a reason to like not feel this negatively about this particular aspect of things. I think that's a great way for us to join you as we show off our
#Vorthos Pride.
That's right. Keep it going in the comment section below. I did it correctly this time. Thank you so much for joining us. I really hope everybody enjoyed, because if you can't tell, that is going to be the end of this particular episode. We will be back next week with more, so please do not miss it.
Ring that bell.
Subscribing and ringing the bell is the best way to find out exactly when that video and all of our videos come out. So we really appreciate you being here. Don't forget as well, if you like the stuff that we do, don't forget to like and share. Those are super helpful, but are more things that you can do if you like really enjoy. You're like, oh my god, this was great. We appreciate that. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like and share. That helps out immensely as well. And we appreciate all of you for anything and everything that you're willing to do to help us out, to support us as we continue to grow as this Geek for All family of channels. And so for now, from us here, I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.